friends were getting pregnant, and they would all tell me that they couldn't find a thing to wear. And, we were young, so we were slightly lower down on the totem pole of our jobs, had to be in the office every day in the 90s and 2000s. You had to dress a certain way. And so people were just spending all this money. And I noticed, in addition to spending all this money, that they were buying things that they were a little bit more tailored. Right. So I had this aha moment of, my friends can't find anything to wear, even at the traditional maternity shops. So I thought, oh my God, this is like an amazing idea.
Welcome to the podcast where motherhood meets reinvention. I'm your host, Sharon Macey, and this is Mom to More. I speak with remarkable moms who've embraced the art of reinvention, crafting their more by leveraging the skills they hone as stay-at-home moms. They share their experiences, struggles, and successes as they return to former careers, rediscover old passions, and chart entirely new paths, offering you the motivation and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Welcome back to a new episode of Mom to More. I am so excited to speak with my guest today, and it is a bit of a full circle moment for me. When I was pregnant with our youngest daughter, I lived in Liz Lange maternity. It was the first time that maternity felt chic and flattering, and for all the moms of a certain age out there, this was nothing short of revolutionary. I mean, imagine bringing body-conscious designs to women at every stage of pregnancy. It was amazing. My guest, the indomitable Liz Lange, didn't just design maternity clothes. She reshaped how we felt about ourselves during one of the biggest transitions in our lives with her namesake brand, Liz Lange Maternity, in the late 1990s. She's an entrepreneur, author, and podcast host, and one of the most influential women in American fashion. She was also the very first designer to dress a host of pregnant A-listers. Yes, Liz started that trend. A true retail pioneer, Liz went on to launch major collaborations with Nike, Target, and HSN, helping bring designer style to millions of women. Today, she's the CEO and creative director of FIG, a New York-based luxury resort wear brand known for its breezy silhouettes, chirpy embellishments, and produced by artisans all over the planet. Liz has been recognized with many awards throughout her career, including Crain's Rising Star Award, Time Magazine's The Most Powerful Entrepreneurs, and she's appeared on Oprah, CNBC, and Bloomberg, profiled in major publications like The Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review, Inhale, just to name a few. She recently brought her family's history to life through the hit Sony podcast, The Just Enough Family, providing a fascinating peek into her family's story and her own reinvention along the way. It is an amazing listen. Liz continues to champion women building stylish, bold new chapters of their own. I am so excited to speak to this incredible mom. Welcome to Mom to More, Liz Lange.
Hi, thank you so much. That introduction was so nice. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm thrilled to talk to you today, and there's a gazillion questions I want to ask you, so let's just dive in here. Okay, I want to point out also, you actually did the reverse of the typical stay-at-home mom journey. You were a full-time working mom first, and then made the conscious choice to dial it back and spend more time with your kids, which we will dive into a little later. But first, how many kids do you have, and where did you raise them?
I have two children. I have a 27-year-old son and a 25-year-old daughter. I raised them on the Upper East Side of New York City, which is where I myself had grown up and been raised. So, I continued a very familiar path.
So you are also empty nester, as are we.
I am. Exactly.
Isn't it nice?
It's mixed. I find it mixed.
I know, in mixed emotions. Yeah.
But as you said, I missed so many years. So I feel like, I didn't have as many years. Mixed.
Right. So let's turn back the clock. You started Liz Lange Maternity before you were even pregnant, sketching designs in the middle of the night because you just knew that you were onto something. Take us back to the birth of Liz Lange Maternity, pun intended. What was it about the idea that gripped you so completely, and how did you keep pushing forward when everyone was saying, forget it?
Well, I'll start by saying I think that like every entrepreneur that I've now spoken to, so many since this all happened, has that same experience. There must be something in us that allows us to push forward in the face of a lot of negativity, because that is what every entrepreneur faces. For some reason, no one is ever open to a new idea. Nobody ever thinks a new idea, even if it's solving a problem that others have, is a good idea. I can't tell you why, but that just seems to be a fact.
Yeah.
So I must be very, very, very sort of hardwired to be very optimistic and very kind of, just go for it anyway. I don't know the answer to that part of
That's
the
a
question.
mindset. That's a total mindset.
It's a
And
mindset that I
yeah.
didn't know I had, but I must have. Because some of
Yeah.
us are just wired for it. So I must have been, but I didn't know that. So I got the idea because, as you said, I wasn't yet pregnant, but I was thinking about it. Like, I was newly married. My friends were newly married. I was in that moment. It sounds like you were too. All the moms that I know today were in that moment back then. I was in the fashion industry, but not really, not a designer. I went to Brown University and I majored in comparative literature. I'm not
Mhm.
a designer. But I was working with this fashion designer and I liked fashion a lot. But again, more like, lots of us women like fashion and shopping, and it was a fun
Sure.
first job. It wasn't like I was, nothing special about what I was doing that was uniquely like design oriented. But anyway, long story short, friends were getting pregnant. They didn't all know each other, but they all had me in common. They would all tell me that they couldn't find a thing to wear. I noticed they were all spending so much money because many of them, we were young. So we were slightly lower down on the totem pole of our jobs, had to be in the office every day. I mean, the word COVID or out of office or 4-day work week, these things didn't exist in the
Didn't
90s and
exist.
2000s. Nobody knew about this. So, you had to dress a certain way. And so people were just spending all this money. And I noticed, in addition to spending all this money, that they were buying things that they were a little bit more tailored, a little bit more fitted. They weren't going out and buying a tent dress.
Right.
So I had this aha moment of, my friends look better and feel better in things that are more fitted. My friends can't find anything to wear, even at the traditional maternity shops. And even if they were women who I didn't consider to be big shoppers prior to being pregnant, they're all shopping now because they have no choice. So whether you like to shop, don't like to shop, it didn't seem to matter. Everybody was spending money. So I thought, oh my God, this is like an amazing idea. And I said to the designer I was working for, who was a designer, who was struggling. I wasn't thinking for myself. I said, I have this
Mhm.
great idea of how to turn around your business. Let's just add the word maternity to your label. Like, we won't change anything about
Right.
it because everything's kind of fitted. But again, this is sort of in the weeds, but in the 90s, stretch fabrications were new. So
Mhm.
I was like, we'll just make things using stretch fabrications and we'll just keep the silhouettes the same. And I think all my friends and people will start buying it as maternity clothing. And he basically was like, there's nothing glamorous about that. Are you smoking crack? What are you thinking? No, absolutely not. And then, I was kind of plucky and still kind of thought it was a good idea. And I was young enough to still be very optimistic. So I trotted off to Bergdorf Goodman, which was in my neighborhood, and said, what do you think? Like, shouldn't you sell designer maternity clothes here so you don't have to lose your customers for, a full year? And
Right.
they also were like, listen, lady, I don't know what you're smoking, but
Which is
women don't.
so
Yeah,
crazy
it's so
because it's a
crazy.
huge market.
So obvious. I was like, oh, really? Like, are you sure? They were like, women don't care what they look like when they're pregnant. They don't care. And I was thinking, yeah, they do. Of course they care. So, but I just sort of like filed it away. But it's what you said. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was what it like it like grabbed me. Who would have ever thought? Like, if you had asked me that as a young girl, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Finally, I said to the designer I was working for, I know this is weird, but I think I have to try to do this. I just think I have to. And then because none of the stores understood it and wanted it, I was sort of forced into being a retailer too. So I
Right.
ended up like having to sell it too, because I was kind of like, okay, if you store can't understand it, well, then nothing. I think women can understand it. So I don't need you in between me and, let's say,
Right.
Sharon. Like, if I could just tell Sharon, I heard you're pregnant. That's what I would do. Like, let's say you and I knew someone in common. I would say to my friend, tell Sharon that I'm selling maternity clothes up in this little office I created, and she can come see me by appointment, because I had to do everything by appointment because I didn't have any sales help. So I needed to know when to be there. And I would make a few things made to order. I kind of thought women are the best networkers. I don't need the money for advertising. I don't need anything. Women will tell other women during this
Yeah.
crucial time in their life.
So, in addition to the women's networks, which is so important, especially now, I think that's something that as the female village, it's just innate in who we are. But what was so interesting about what you just said, Liz, is at that time, maternity was anything but chic. But it was dowdy, it was icky. But when you look at what was happening in the fashion world, it was ruled by Calvin Klein and Alexander McQueen and Tom Ford, which was this total fashion disconnect. What was your take on that gap? I assume that when you got pregnant, you just wore all of your own clothes.
Yes, of course. Honestly, that was part of my hesitation. It wasn't just Tom Ford and Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren. It was some of the female designers, let's say like Donna Karan. She was huge then. And I thought, honestly, this must not be a good idea. Because if this were a good idea, some of these very powerful design houses, and for some reason I kept thinking of Donna Karan, they'd be
Right.
doing it. Because Donna Karan was what a ton of my friends were buying because she would make these kind of stretchy, easy pieces. Some of them were cashmere. They were a fortune. So, but my friends were like, listen, I know I don't normally spend like this, but nothing works, nothing fits. So yeah, I thought it was strange. I don't know what to make of it, but I think that that's also just like that's just the way of the world. There would be no room for young and new ideas and entrepreneurs, which we've seen like such a huge proliferation of, if
Right.
the sort of big companies did see all the holes in the market. Somehow they don't. I don't know how to explain it. I
Takes a
don't.
female entrepreneur to see those holes in the market.
I don't know about that. I just think sometimes someone just sees something differently, or just I was lucky. A lot of different information was coming at once that kind of
Right.
clicked for me.
Fantastic. I just love the origin story of that. What's also interesting is you came from a fascinating background where a certain kind of life was expected of you. So can you talk about what was supposed to happen versus the life you actually built for yourself? And also, who was your initial backer for Liz Lange Maternity?
Right. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. Like sometimes when I speak to entrepreneurs and they'll say, "Oh, that must have been so brave of you. It's so brave to take the leap and leave a job and start something." So I always like to just say right off the bat, it really wasn't that brave. The truth of the matter is, first of all, when you're in your 20s, no matter what, like it's not that brave. At that point I didn't have a family to support. I was married. My husband did have a job. So it was like nothing terrible was going to happen
Right.
if I tried to start Liz Lang Maternity and it didn't work. But also to your point. So I came from this kind of very unusual background. And I always say again, right from the start, spoiler alert, we lost the money, because I wouldn't just be sitting here bragging about like, oh, we're so rich. That was then, this is now. So I grew up in an extraordinarily publicly wealthy family because, major fortunes are public. So a Forbes 400 name brand family where, I never thought for a minute, never in a billion years that money would be anything that I had to think about or worry about. And as a matter of fact, again, I cared a lot. I mean, I went to Brown. I was certainly like I was a very much of a thinking person,
Mhm.
but I really wasn't thinking necessarily that I needed to have a career or that I'd want to have a career. Like it was, again, I'm 59. Like it wasn't 100% that every woman worked. And so I kind of thought for most of my life that once I had my children, probably wouldn't work. I would raise them, which I still think is an incredible thing to do. And when I started Liz Lang Maternity, we still had the money. I went to my father and I had this idea, and he, like so many others, he wasn't unique. Didn't think it was a particularly good idea. Like nobody did. He was really nice about it, but I don't think he was thinking like, wow, this is going to
What do the guys know?
nobody knows, but I
Right.
think the women didn't know. I just so you know, I went to my pregnant friends, the ones that were complaining to me that were spending all this money on the Donna Karan and Calvin Klein and saying, I could barely get through this pregnancy. I have nothing to wear. And I said, I have a great idea. I'm going to make some clothing. It's going to be expensive. It's not going to be as expensive as Calvin Klein and Donna Karan, but it's not going to be cheap. Isn't that great news? And they were like, nah, we don't need it. We get by. So nobody thought it was a good
Oh,
idea.
interesting.
However, so
Yeah.
my dad didn't think it was a particularly good idea, but we were very close, and a very, very, very good father. And he said, "I will lend you some money to start this, but if it doesn't take off, I think he said within 3 months, if you're not paying your own bills, then it's just a hobby, and I'm not going to fund your hobby." So
Right.
I didn't have a business plan. I barely believe in them. I kept my costs down. And in the end, I think my dad had paid for about $25,000 worth of bills, which is not nothing. And this was 1997, not calling it nothing at all. But it wasn't like today's entrepreneurs with like, I mean, I will say that I started with 25,000 from him. I was self-sufficient easily within 3 months. And when I sold the brand 10 years later to private equity, we were the largest maternity apparel brand in the United States. So it was a major growth from the 25,000. We had hundreds of millions of dollars in sales at that point. I had no expenses. I rented a very inexpensive office that did not have a window on the street. I didn't have any employees. I had an answering machine. There were no real computers back then. Like,
Right.
I had a fax and an answering machine, and I did everything made to order. I did not invest in inventory. So if you came to see me, you saw a little sample line of like 8, what I called 8 easy pieces, and you could choose your color. And the colors were black, navy, and chocolate brown, because that's what I thought you needed, this little capsule wardrobe.
That's so
And
New
then
York.
it was so, yeah, it was so New York. It was so 90s, and it was very clean. And the idea was, if you, whatever you could try on, small, medium, or large, whatever, and then I would make it for you. I'd fax my factory. They were local. I would fax them, and 2 weeks later, I would drop them off for you. If you didn't live in New York, you really couldn't shop with me. What really amazed me was pretty soon, like, people were like flying in from all over the world. I mean, I ended up opening up stores and having an internet site and a catalog and all those other things.
Right.
But at the beginning, the first year, people started saying, no, we're going to fly to New York. I've got to see this clothing, which like completely blew my mind.
I love that. Very bespoke. And I remember the
Yes.
stores. I mean, again, I said I lived in Liz Lange. It was just so refreshing to be able to have clothing that fit appropriately and it looked good and it was chic and it was fashion forward and, it checked all the boxes. So
Yeah.
here you are, you're building this brand. You've got, I think it was 3 stores in New
By the
York.
end, I had 3 stores.
People are flying in, from everywhere
Yeah.
to wear your clothing. And you've also spoken about the very surreal period of time around September 11th. Your first fashion show was literally happening that morning and everything changed in an instant. And then you also faced a cancer diagnosis
It was
while you're raising
crazy.
kids and running a business. So, I mean, like, mind
Yeah.
blowing right off the bat. Reflect on that for a moment. Crazy and overwhelming, I think, would be an understatement. What did that chapter sort of teach you about resilience and sort of redefining strength?
Well, everything was quite unexpected. So as you said, first of all, in 2001, my business was at kind of an all-time high. Like, I'd started in 97 and we had grown very quickly. And I found myself all of a sudden with this big store on Madison Avenue, another store on Long Island, another store in Beverly Hills. I had a huge celebrity clientele. I basically felt like if you were pregnant during that time period, you were my customer. I was just a very, very, very big brand, and admittedly a high-end brand. But if you were spending at all, if you were somebody of a certain income bracket, you were you wore Liz Lange and you probably wore nothing else during a pregnancy. And I was getting a crazy amount of press because back then, I don't know, press was different and it meant more. So I was on all these TV shows and I was in People magazine. I was just,
Yeah.
it was, a whirlwind time for me. I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I thought, like, pinch me, like, everything's incredible. In addition, I hadn't announced it yet, but I had been approached first by Target to take over their entire maternity department at every single Target location, to do Liz Lang for Target, a less expensive line, much less expensive. And I was going to announce that. And I also had been approached by Nike to do Liz Lang for Swoosh, a line of maternity active apparel for. So this was like huge. Then I thought to myself, I'm going to do a fashion show. I'm going to do a real fashion show during Fashion Week in the tents in New York City, which is a huge thing. There had never been one before. So this was very, very exciting. I was working around the clock on it all summer because my fashion show date, as you said, was September 11th. That is always Fashion Week, 9:30 in the morning. So this was my moment. Not only was I having this fashion show, but I was going to tell the press who were all coming to that fashion show. It was a packed show. But that's where I was going to announce the Target and the Nike deal, because I was going to show some of the designs for that too. And then everyone was going to understand that that's what we were doing because it had the logos on it. And all their executives were in town. And it was just like this indescribable moment for me. Like, everything.
It's like you've reached the pinnacle. I
It
mean,
was the pinnacle. Like,
you did it.
in my mind, not good. Things could not get any better. And so,
But then, yeah.
then yes. So then, sort of perestroika. First of all, in the middle of my show, all the TV camera crews, CNN, Good Morning America, the Today Show, they all start running out of the show. I have no idea why. Information didn't travel that fast back then. We had Blackberries and flip phones. Obviously, long story short, we walked outside. The world had changed. My show wasn't canceled, but everything that about my show basically was like, it's like it never happened. Again, that's not the tragedy of 9/11, but that was my own personal experience with it, that all the money we had spent, everything, all the press we were going to get, of course, we got none of it because the world changed. We were talking about 9/11 as we should be. So this show never happened, basically. And so that was that. Then, coincidentally, at that same time, the unthinkable, which is that my family's business, which had nothing to do with me, my family's business, which was a multi-billion-dollar business, seems to be faltering, like
Mm.
something that maybe they're going bankrupt, but that's also inconceivable in my mind at this point. It's almost like Princess Bride, like maybe I need to relearn what the word inconceivable means because it was all happening. And so that's happening. And I'm thinking that's not good and that's
It's
strange.
like,
And
God,
then on top of it
crazy.
all, I went for just my routine, we all do as women, like my routine, gynecologist check-in for a pap smear, which happens all the time. And I get this call back that there's something weird about it. And I remember I said, well, so what? We'll just do another pap the way that sometimes happens. And
Hmm.
they were like, no, we don't think that's what this is. So that and so then turns out that I had cervical cancer, which is extraordinarily unusual. Um,
And you
and
were young,
I was only 34. So
really
very
young.
young. It was highly unusual. And so I had to have, a radical hysterectomy, which was a very big operation.
Huge.
I
Yeah.
had chemotherapy and radiation. I had young children. I had a business. My
Yeah.
family money was going away. I was like, it was crazy, but
All right. How did you deal with that? I mean, and what did that teach you? I mean, did you discover sort of this inner resilient mama that came out?
when people go through things and then they're always described later as like they were so brave or they were a warrior or they were, and like I guess yes, but on the other hand, what choice does one have? Like I'm not saying, like, do you know what I mean, like anyone, like I just kind of like I guess I could have just crumpled up into a ball, and but like
And
life goes on.
some people do.
I had no
Some
choice.
people do. Yeah.
I guess they do. That's not who I am. I guess that's not who entrepreneurs are, I guess. So like I thought of it, I guess it's the way starting Liz Lange maternity was, like the way I've treated this my entire business life, which is because people often ask like, well, how'd you know what to do next? And I was like, I don't know. Every day I was handed a billion problems and I would try to think of what the best possible solution was, not that I knew, and go for it. And it was one thing at a time and one foot in front of the other. I guess I'm going to have this operation and I hear that I have to have chemotherapy and radiation. Did I want that? No.
Yeah.
But okay. And then there were days when I was absolutely exhausted. Radiation and chemotherapy makes you absolutely like exhausted. It's not the word for it. And I stayed in bed on those days and it was awful. And I was
Right.
depressed, but I was lucky. I always say this because it's true. I had somebody who worked for us at home who was fabulous with my children and could take them to school and pick them up when I could not. And my husband, I was so lucky. And I think about this all the time. I think I'm a very glass half full person, and that really helps. So I
Yeah.
kept thinking all the time, what really helped me get through it was I thought to myself, there are women my age and younger who get death sentences, who get told like there's nothing we can do. It's inoperable. You've got 6 months. I mean, they're horrible stories, but we all read about them. And I thought, I am being told that this is curable. I
Mhm.
am being told that this is what I need to do, but that, obviously with cancer, anything can happen, but that the odds are overwhelmingly favorable that I will be okay. And I think I was just like, I am lucky. I know how crazy that sounds,
Yeah.
but that is the way I felt, like
But
I
that
am.
is totally glass half full. I mean, the fact that what you were dealing with all at once, that you just said you were totally lucky, that it's totally glass half full. But I think that's a wonderful perspective to have. I think for a lot of us, women of a certain age, but you were so, so young when that happened. But that is inherent in who you are. And I think that helped
I think
drive.
people joke that I have like Prozac running through my brains. Like maybe I'm just not that smart. Like, I don't know why. I just like, I was very upset. I mean, I don't want you to think that like there weren't
Oh,
times when
yeah.
I was sobbing about it, where I was very depressed about it. But I was very focused on my business and I did not want this word to get out that I was sick. I had
Right.
this idea, maybe it was slightly paranoid, that it could hurt my Target deal, that it could hurt my Nike deal. I think that helped too. So I really didn't tell anyone. Like my closest friends knew. I think one or two people that worked for me that I
Hmm.
trusted very, implicitly, they knew, but nobody else knew. My life was not about cancer. It wasn't like every time someone saw me, they'd be like, how are you today, Liz? What can we do for you?
Right.
Everybody treated me normally and all my conversations were not about cancer. And I love that. That again, like everyone
Yeah.
handles things
It helped
differently.
to
So
normalize things.
I
Yeah.
like that. It was
Yeah.
very compartmentalized. If I went in the morning to get the chemotherapy or radiation, it was over by 8:30 in the morning. And if I could, I went into my office for a few hours. If I couldn't, I went home and tried to work from home and was with my children and my husband. And it somehow, I got through it. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your mom skills from two perspectives. First, what skills did you hone from being a mom that you still depend on today and that you would not have discovered about yourself from just being a businesswoman and not being a mom?
God, that's a good question and a hard question. Well, my business came before my momness. I was a,
That's true.
I was,
Yes.
I was a business owner first. I think what I learned from my children was that, like, when I said to you that thing about business plan, like, you kind of have to expect the unexpected. Like, you could wake up in the morning, and I'm always like, because, the way we all think motherhood's going to go, and I'm going to put them in their little outfits, the ones I thought of for them, and
Never goes that way. Yeah.
never. And hi ho, we're going to go off to school and they're going to be perfect. And then I'm going to pick them up. And, kids, like, they're on the floor having a fit. They hate what they're wearing. They they are in a bad mood. Like anything, anything and everything can happen. And that's true in business too. So if you don't learn to kind of roll with that and kind of just like treat yourself, like, I think motherhood, you're kind of in a small boat and you try to go left and left isn't working. So you go right is kind of the way that I treat business too. Or that whole idea of like maybe flexibility and
being able to pivot. Yeah.
Pivoting. And you're the parent, the ducks follow you, but you do also kind of have to go with them a little bit. And I feel like I have that in business too. Like, I didn't know at the very, very beginning of Liz Lange Maternity that it was going to be all about fitted. I knew that it was going to be about more tailored, but I kind of learned from the business and my customers what they wanted. And then I would pivot that way. And the same thing with the kids, like what they need on a certain day may not be what I plan for that certain day. But you know what? We have to scrap what I plan and we just have to stay home and bake cookies. And I noticed that the biggest mistake I could make, which I was making sometimes, was to be present in neither place, to be at home with my children, but really looking at my BlackBerry. And then conversely, if I'm at the office and I'm like very worried that I should be at the school play or something with my kids, and I'm not getting anything good done at the office either. So I'm not always good at it, but just commit to being present at that place, whether it's the office or the home.
I love that. Hey, Liz, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to dive into your decision to sell your business, sell your brand, and lean into family life. Folks, don't go away. A lot more coming back. Quick pause to welcome a new local sponsor, Wild Radish Eatery in Nyack, New York. I've been getting their weekly home deliveries, and it's a total game changer, bringing organic, slow-cooked seasonal meals, baked goods, and seriously delicious snacks right to your door in the tri-state area. Everything's gluten-free friendly, mostly vegan, and made by real humans, not a factory. So whether you're postpartum, postmenopausal, or just done thinking about meal prep, go to thewildradish.com and use MTM20 for 20% off your first delivery. And another everyday favorite I swear by, our longtime sponsor, Ally Shoes. These are some of the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn. They're designed by women, for women, finally, right? And thoughtfully placed padding that actually supports your feet all day long. And I'm not the only one saying it either. InStyle, Pure Wow, and HuffPost all rave about them. Flats, boots, heels, you name it. And yes, there's a great origin story behind the brand, too. Head to ally.nyc, where listeners of the pod get $40 off your first pair of heels with code MOMTOMORE40, and 10% off your first pair of boots and flats with code MOMTOMORE10. Ally is reimagining how comfort and function support women every day, and I love that. Hey, we're back with Liz Lange. Okay, Liz, you have been super candid that you could not run a booming business and be fully present for your kids. And then after these massive brand deals with Target and Nike, and also your Completely Me line with HSN, which focus on the accessible non-maternity women's wear, you ultimately made the choice to sell your company and step back to focus on your family. Why then? And what did that period of life teach you about balance and knowing when it's time to pivot and do something like that?
For every person, it's a very personal thing and a very individual decision. I was working on Liz Lange, as any entrepreneur will say, from the day I started it till the day I sold it, around the clock. Like, there's no success without being kind of an animal. I was so driven. I was the person, that was sending texts and emails to employees at 3 a.m, like, have you thought of this? Shouldn't we do that? Let's talk about this tomorrow. Like, I was just extraordinarily focused on it. It's very popular to talk about women having it all. It's extremely popular. I don't believe in it.
I agree with you.
We all are
Can't have
finite.
it all. You can have it all, but you just can't have it all together.
No, and I think I've had it all in the best possible way, but not at the same time. So I did feel very much like I was that mom. There were different moments that would happen that were just like yikes moments, kids crying as I got on a flight on a Saturday or Sunday to fly to Minneapolis to be at, Target for the week, or I would miss things. I famously missed the interview when I was applying my children to the most popular primary school in New York City. Somehow they ended up getting into it. But like, I just felt like wheels were slightly off the bus. And then I felt like the older they got, the worse it got. The more cognizant they were, the more they could say words like, Mommy, please don't leave. Mommy, do you have to go to the office today? Mommy, can't you come on this play date too? I was never the mom on the play date. I was never that mom. I wasn't the mom in the baby classes. Again, I'm just being totally honest. I was not that mom.
And that
And
tugs
so
on your
it
heartstrings. It
does.
really
I didn't
does.
know the
Yeah.
other moms. I wasn't good friends with the other moms. I'm sure they didn't even like me. Honestly, I mean, I was, little Miss Thing. I'm not even sure it fully hit me. To be honest, what happened was I went out to raise money because I was going to, so you do this thing called a road show with a banker. You're raising money. I was going to raise money for the first time, really, to do a major expansion, many, many, many more retail stores. And much to my surprise, what I got mostly was offers to buy the entire company, which I did not think it was for sale. I was not thinking that. But then I started
Yeah.
thinking, it's a lot of money that I'm being offered. I could spend the time with my children that I'm not spending with them. And it just clicked again. Like you just go with, I just go with my gut. It just kind of clicked. It wasn't like I had this grand plan of this is the right moment. When they turn 9 and 11, I'm going to sell the business. No, quite the opposite. I was going for expansion. I realized this is right. This just feels right.
Right.
And I did it. It was hard. Like, even though I did it and it was what I wanted, it's hard to segue from being Liz Lange to being, a
Mom.
mom, just a stay-at-home
Yeah.
mom. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but it was new for me. That is when I sold the rights to do maternity at that point. Like I sold everything I do with maternity. And that's when I started my line. I guess I couldn't just be a stay-at-home mom. So that's when I started my home shopping network line, Completely Me by Liz Lange, which was a line of affordable dresses mostly that were not
It
maternity.
gave you more flexibility because
It gave me a ton.
And family time, which you had missed out on before. So now you have that. And also bigger kids, bigger issues, right?
I wouldn't trade anything that I did 100%. Like I can't imagine not being there for them when they were in like upper middle school and high school.
Okay. So after that, you later made the decision in 2012 to buy the brand Fig.
It was
Talk about that.
2020.
Oh,
It was
2020. Sorry about that.
Not at
2020.
all. So what happened is, I've always been a worker now. Now the idea of the Liz Lange that I thought I
And your
was,
kids are older, right? They're
my kids are
getting
older. At
to,
this point, they're in college. I do this line that I told you about, Completely Me by Liz Lange for the Home Shopping Network, where I would go to Tampa, which is where their studios are, once a month for 3 days and sell the line 24/7 for those 3 days, like no sleep, just on air 24/7. And it was a super successful line. So that was great. I loved doing it. But COVID hit. I was getting exhausted from that. I was kind of done anyway. The timing was perfect. I thought I'm not going to do that anymore. But then my children are in college and I'm like, I'm not someone to sit around. I have to be working. I'm so used to working. I have to be working. So I was thinking about, do I start another brand? Do I buy a brand? Sadly, so many brands during COVID started going out of business. So many fashion brands. It was a really horrible time. But so a brand that I had always loved, I had no business connection to, but this brand Fig, it's FIGUE because there's another Fig that's spelled differently. A resort wear brand that sells a ton of like caftans and easy dresses, things I was wearing a lot of during COVID actually, became for sale. And I decided to buy that brand at auction and relaunch it. And that became my new business. And it was the first time that I bought a brand. It was a brand that I did not, I'm not the founder of it. And so that's been a lot of fun. And that's kind of been my last 5 years.
And has that been easier on you than starting a brand from scratch?
It is.
Right? Acquiring an existing brand. Right.
But it's easier because so much of the hard, sort of what I'd call like the takeoff years of like, almost like when the plane takes off, the ascent, that had already happened with this brand. So that made it easier. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah,
And you could be more present, which was something that you wanted to do.
Absolutely. And my children, I wish my children wanted me to be with them more. Isn't that the way it goes? But they're not. They don't, they do their own thing.
So I'm sort of backtracking a little. When we met at an event, you shared that your son once wrote a blog entitled Liz Lange Isn't Who You Think She Is. So was this heartwarming or was it horrifying?
My son is very funny and very provocative. So it was kind of meant to be funny, but there's always some honesty.
But it was his heart talking.
Yes.
Right?
And he was young. And so it was just about like, mom is always someplace else. Like she's not at home. She's, out at a cocktail party. She's at a business meeting. She's here. She's there. I mean, the one thing that was completely made up, as it turns out, this is just one of those things. I don't drink. I don't like alcohol. I never have. I'm not an alcoholic. I just don't like alcohol. But in his blog, I'm an alcoholic who's always drunk. So that was horrendous because then people would be like, oh my gosh, Liz, I had no idea how long have you been sober? I'm like, I'm not sober. And I don't even think they believe me. I still think it was like, Liz, the first step is admitting it. And I'm like,
you were going through the denial phase, right?
Yes. I was like,
oh my God, that's hysterical.
You got me. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. So yeah, so that was interesting when he did that. Yeah. My kids still to this day, they like to kind of exaggerate and laugh about the early years. And,
but then when you dialed it back and you were more around, he should have redone the blog talking about, Liz Lange is what you think she is now.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
No, I don't know what your children are like, but that's not. No.
Well,
but anyway, they're funny, and it was funny, and we do still laugh about Liz Lange is not who you think she is. We still think it's funny, and it's a very funny title.
I love that. All right, Liz. So you have mastered maternity wear, resort chic fashion, and raising kids. Now it's time for the Mom to More lightning round.
Oh, no.
Okay. We're going to do super short answers. Are you ready? I have a few questions to ask you.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
New York City, Hamptons, or Palm Beach?
Palm Beach.
Caftan or jeans?
Caftan.
Morning mama or night owl?
Both.
Cool. I like that. Go-to coffee order?
Latte. Made at home.
Let's have a good coffee machine. The first celeb you ever dressed?
Cindy Crawford.
One item every mom should pack for a weekend away with her significant other.
A really versatile dress that you can dress up and dress down. Really versatile.
Favorite thing you did with your kids?
Baking.
Your best mom moment?
Traveling with the kids.
I love that. Love that. And one piece of advice you would give to a mom dreaming about her next chapter?
Everything and anything is possible. Like, don't let the naysayers, which are often yourself, like get in your way.
I love that. Because you're right. It comes from inside versus an external force. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So Liz, unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close because you are so fun. And I feel like I can chat with you all day. At Mom to More, we always talk about the idea that motherhood is not a pause. It's really a launch pad. So Liz Lange, what is the more you are stepping into now?
My fantasy is that I'll write the book I never wrote called Labor of Love. That is all about starting the brand Liz Lange Maternity and, the whole journey from beginning to selling it. I think about that all the time. And then just life lessons along the way.
Right. That would be an amazing book. And I love the title.
Thank you.
Love that. Okay, Liz, so please tell everyone where they can find you online, listen to your podcast. Folks, everything is going to be in the show notes.
Follow me on Instagram. I answer everybody's comments personally. I'm the only one on my Instagram. It's Liz Lange Official. Listen to the podcast, which is available wherever you listen to podcasts, called The Just Enough Family. It's kind of my whole life story. It's fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Liz Lange, how fun to meet you, right? I wore your clothes. And when we met, I showed you that picture of me from 25 years ago, wearing one of your dresses. Such an inspirational story. You have been through so much. I love just your attitude about everything. You are a glass half full woman. So I really appreciate that. And just thank you for your time today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, this wraps another episode of Mom to More. If this conversation sparked something in you, hit follow or subscribe and leave a quick 5-star review to help more moms discover the show that's shaping culture. And remember, you already possess the skills and experience you need to start on this journey because reinvention doesn't have an age limit.